Aibuan, Vanakkam, Assalamu alaikum, and a very good evening. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on this, the fifth episode of our Be Inspired series, brought to you in collaboration with the LMD and the Daily Financial Times. Now, as you know, the Be Inspired series is being combined this week with also our topic in focus, which is, of course, the shifts in trade, global trade across the Southeast Asian region, and how that's going to look not only overall for the business environment, but also for Sri Lanka specifically. So today we're focusing on the topic of logistics, and we have joining us today James or Jack Muse, who is the regional president of the Middle East, Indian subcontinent, and Africa region for FedEx Express. He's based in Dubai, and Mr. Muse leads more than 9,000 FedEx Express and TNT team members and is responsible for providing the strategic direction for the region. Speaking with him today, we have moderating this session, Director of Logistics and Digital Service Integration for MAS Holdings, also past Chairman of the Sri Lanka Shippers Council and the Chairman of the Global Shippers Forum, as well as the Chairman of the Logistics Subcommittee for the Joint Apparel Association Forum, Mr. Sean Van Dort. Gentlemen, thank you very much for taking the time to join us here on this AmCham series. And Sean, over to you. Welcome, and I look forward to an interesting and invigorating session.
Thank you, and a warm welcome to you, Jack, once again, and to everybody who's on this webinar. It's a pleasure. I have known Jack for some time now, and always a straight shooter. So I look forward to some interesting comments today. And to start off this, Jack, may I ask you one of the questions that we already have looked at very strongly. We wanted to know, post-COVID, how a logistics company like FedEx has brought in innovation to provide logistics solutions to the shipper in general. And if you think that you have any slides or any presentation that you want to do, we can do it now and then go back to the questions later, or how do you want to take it, Jack?
Well, we'll first of all, thank you for the invite to speak with the Sri Lankan business team. It's always a pleasure. I got to admit, it was a little intimidating when I found out the topic was to be inspired. So, you know, trying to inspire people is a hallmark of leadership. But I decided to first talk about people that have inspired me. So, Sean, if you don't mind, I'm going to share a screen here.
Thank you.
And just share some of the things that our folks have done. Hopefully this comes, oops, wrong one. You can tell I'm still not an expert at this. Let me get the right share screen here. This one. All right, so let me see if I can get this a little better yet. There we go. So let me describe a little bit about what you're seeing here. I mean, the last 12 to 18 months has been a challenge on all of us, quite honestly. And we've seen dramatic changes in the way that our business environment is being handled, the dramatic changes in the way we're interacting with each other.
Sorry to interrupt, just to jump in. I think your sharing mode is with your speaker notes. You might want to change that.
All right. So it doesn't say that, but I will change that. I guess it was right the first time.
Yes, I believe so.
Is that better?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No
So, so I just wanted to share a couple of examples of things that people that have inspired me. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that of the efforts of our medical people around the world, not only in developing vaccines, but also in treating people that have been sick throughout this whole time. But the first picture on the left is a courier in Manhattan. I don't know how many of you had the opportunity to go to New York, but I can tell you streets in New York were never like that. where a courier could walk by himself down an entire street. And so obviously, as we think about essential workers, it really changed during the pandemic. What we saw is that our courier forces around the world and in Sri Lanka too were considered essential workers, because not only did they eventually deliver vaccines and other medical supplies, but they delivered things that kept business operating throughout the pandemic. And so as everybody else is locked in, our courier in Manhattan is walking down the street by himself, delivering packages to people that were either at their homes or in their offices. On the top right, one of our salespeople in India took it upon himself to go find an opportunity to feed his community. And so, part of the culture of caring for the broader community is to go and take care of those people around you. And this salesperson went out not only giving food, but he was also giving out masks. We were able to provide face masks for him to give out when he gave out food too. So, an inspirational going outside of anything that anybody asked him to do, just to deliver. And then on the bottom, as our couriers in South Africa were getting ready to go out after they were told that they were essential workers, as opposed to all the things that they could have been doing, they left that day with a song. They all got together, and the video is, unfortunately, I don't have the video to share with you, but that, as opposed to complaining about having to go to work or complaining about having to go out, they chose to take the positive on this and actually started singing before they went out for their deliveries and taking care of their communities in the way that only our folks can. So consequently, we came up with a little saying internally that not all heroes wear capes. Some of our heroes wear FedEx uniforms and go out and take care of their communities. So when you're talking about inspiration and things that have inspired me over the last 12 to 18 months, it's been the people I work with. And while I've got great executives at this company, great people I work with, I'm very much inspired by the frontline teams who were out actually in the field during this time and delivering services to our people. So I wanted to share that before I went on. Now I got to figure out how to stop sharing here. This one.
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah. So
that was very inspiring.
yeah. So Sean, as you asked me the question about what FedEx does to facilitate a logistics as a solution company, I think it's important that I start off with, we have 500,000 workers around the world, and people that while everything else stopped, they kept moving. And so it's very basic. It's not very fancy or anything like that, but these people truly did a remarkable job going out and delivering packages. So first thing we do to provide solutions around the world is we show up to work. We keep our airplanes flying, we keep business moving. The second thing that we do as a solution is we look for innovative ways to continue to operate. So while our couriers were classified as essential workers, we have a lot of people that answer phones. We have a lot of people that sit in offices and do engineering work. And so what we found out a way to do, and a lot of the other world did too, is we found out a way to route phone calls to homes so that they could answer calls and take care of packages that were in distress for whatever reason, or customers that needed a pickup. We did a lot of those sorts of things. So we never shut down operation. During the entire pandemic, we operated every day, and not just in this part of the world, but in the entire world. So we kept our airplanes flying. To that point, we delivered 110 kilotons of PPE, personal protective equipment. We delivered 2.5 billion face masks around the world between January of 2020 and September 2021. In Sri Lanka, our friends at Mountain Hawk Express, the guys that carry the FedEx banner for us down there, delivered 20 metric tons of PPE during the same period of time. And ultimately, when the vaccines were produced, we delivered COVID-19 vaccines to 50 countries around the world. Has passenger airlines had to shut down, we had to figure out a way to continue to carry more and more. So we were operating extra sections. We were turning our flights. Some of you may or may not know, we have 680 aircraft, just jet aircraft, along with about another 300 turboprop aircraft in order to cover the world. Early on in the pandemic, there was a statement made that the vaccine distribution was going to go into gridlock. Not only were passenger networks shut down, but we needed 1,000 747 equivalents to deliver vaccines around the world. That was the fear that was put into the market. So we did a little engineering and we understood that 1,000 747s worth of capacity was 1 week of FedEx capacity, just 1 week. So we felt strongly that we had a network that could support the global effort in order to deliver masks, deliver vaccines, and deliver everything else that was needed in order to keep the networks moving. And those were picked up by a lot of different companies too. You know, FedEx wasn't the only one, but we're very proud of the role that we played in order to, you know, make a difference and help defeat the COVID or the virus, and so that we could get the world moving again.
Jack, I can imagine, because I had the privilege of visiting your hub in Memphis, Tennessee, and I saw the operation on a very, very cold February night. I can just imagine what your guys went through during the whole pandemic time, and it's amazing. And I just, on behalf of all Sri Lankans, I want to thank FedEx for what they have done around the world, and plus also in Sri Lanka, Jack.
Yeah, well, our friends at Mountain Hawk have just represented us extremely well over the years. We've been with them a long time, and we're delighted to have them part of the FedEx family.
Absolutely. Jack, as you know, Sri Lanka is striving to become a hub destination, and the necessary protocols and the legislations were put in place from a government point of view. But in your mind, what are the key factors that you will consider to establish a hub facility in this part of the world?
Well, I think when we look at hub facilities around the world, one of the first thing we look at is geography. Is it located? And by geography, I mean economic. And that doesn't have to be in the middle of the global economy, but it has to be tied closely to a regional economy that allows it to be effective. So when you look at our hubs today, we have one in Guangzhou, China. It's in the Pearl River Valley, which is a huge manufacturing base. And so we're allowed to operate in there. In Europe, we're in Paris and Liège, our main hubs for us. So you're in the middle of the Western European economy. In going back to Asia, we have another hub in Osaka, Japan. Obviously, a key North Pac hub for us because of Japan as well as China and Korea connectivity through that hub. In Latin America, like most companies, we base our Latin America hub out of Miami, a very nice tie between North America and South America via the Miami hub. Canada is in Toronto. Toronto is obviously a very big city. And then when you look in the US, you see several hubs. You see what the major one in Memphis that Sean, you got to see. And we also have hubs in Indy, Newark, New York, and Oakland, California. So when you look at all those hubs, they have one area of very important value is that they connect different business trades across the globe. And I'll take the example of Memphis. When we developed Memphis, one of the things that they looked at is to say just the domestic US. What is the economic center of the US market? And when they did the work, they felt that the economic center was really up in the Ohio Valley, let's say, you know, the state of Ohio or Kentucky or somewhere in there. At the time, FedEx was kind of, nobody really understood what we were trying to do. The chairman, Mr. Smith, had a vision of connecting things overnight, right? And the value that would bring to business. And so he went back to close to his hometown in Memphis and talked to the leaders there. They believed in him. And then we got another benefit. Obviously, we have much better weather in Memphis than we do in other parts, but quickly, Memphis was able to connect the United States overnight because of jet aircraft and the ability to move. So geography, especially economic geography, is an important factor to consider in doing that. As you go to some of the other key elements that we look at, what is the customs regime in where you're dealing? Do you have a customs friendly environment? And when you think of that, you think often of countries like Hong Kong and Singapore. Now, Hong Kong and Singapore really didn't have a lot of natural products. They definitely are they're not a big mining area. They're not a big, they don't have just a lot of natural products that people go. But what they did understand very clearly is that if I set up a open network of customs, allowing people to trade freely in this marketplace. Now, I'm not talking security. They are very secure markets. This is just how they apply tariffs and those things. And they quickly understood that while they don't get all the same tariff revenue that another country might get, what they get is explosive business growth. They have a lot more businesses relocating to Hong Kong and or Singapore because of the ability to trade. If I were recommending something to Sri Lanka, one of the things I'd look at is, boy, you have that big manufacturing area of India right north of you, and you have a free trade agreement with India. Boy, wouldn't it be interesting if you could set up a free trade, a low tariff environment, a very effective customs regime in Sri Lanka, and be a distribution center for a lot of India. It's hard for anybody, any country, to compete with India with 1.35 billion people. But by doing things differently, you have a really unique opportunity to do some different things. And then obviously the workforce. I mean, you want to go to a workforce that has education, has talent to man the jobs that you're looking at, and the regional relationships. Like we talked about, Sri Lanka's already got a pretty strong regional relationship with India. And how can you use that in order to grow the overall business environment? I think there's some very interesting things that could be looked at with that. So, and we know, like, for example, the ability to connect by air encourages trade between countries. So if I can connect goods, so when we look at total transportation of goods and services around the world, only 1% of the weight moves by air, 1%, but 35% of the value. So having air hubs, having the capability to have an air hub, you get the high value items that are flowing through those areas. India is a producer of a lot of those goods, and there's a lot of stuff going into India as well. So, it's an interesting study that would be, how could Sri Lanka play in that environment?
Thank you, Jack. Just for everybody's information, Sri Lanka did embark on a free port concept with designated areas to where customs regimes will not interfere, and the free movement of cargo and the digitalization of work is set up in place. Of course, it's infancy. There are some companies who have taken advantage of that, but I believe that this is something that we would have to really strongly market, like you said, with our neighbors, India, who we cannot ignore, because end of the day, together we'll be stronger than individually trying to do something. So Sri Lanka, India together will be great.
Yeah, third largest economy by 2030, India. And so you got a remarkable, and then I think the other remarkable opportunity you have right now is Winston Churchill said, "Let no crisis go wasted. Let no good crisis go wasted." So obviously the world is coming out of COVID and trying to find its footing and trying to find how to move forward. I know that as we go through lockdowns for very appropriate reasons, I'm not trying to talk people out of lockdowns, but if you were trying to attract business to Sri Lanka right now and you said, okay, come in here, spend 2 weeks in quarantine in a hotel, and then when you're done, we'll come out and talk business. But what would happen if you could say, you know what, we're very interested in you coming in. We want you to be safe. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to have you tested when you get in. We'll put you in the hotel for 12 hours. Next day, we'll get up. I'll have your results. You'll be ready to go out, and we'll be having some meetings. How much more interesting does a business have to say, you know what, Sri Lanka is doing things different. When I go to Singapore, or when I go to Hong Kong, or when I go to these other places, Vietnam, I'm being told I have to quarantine for 2 weeks. but they have a fast pass for me that still saves, keeps me safe, keeps the country safe, but allows for me to conduct business. And those are the things that everybody's acting the same way right now. But if we can find a way to act safely and effectively and act differently than everybody else, it might create opportunities for us.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree with you. As during the course of conversations with many people who travel, they keep on complaining about this part of the world, how rigid and how dogmatic we are in our thinking. So that will definitely have to change. And I believe we have started the initiative to relax the COVID protocols for businessmen specifically who would like to come into Sri Lanka. And we hope that we could fine tune that more. And as much as we are developing our airport in Katunayaka and in Mattala, we are seeing that there might be some light at the end of the tunnel where you don't have to stay for 2 weeks. 2 weeks in a hotel just counting your fingers. Jack, in your view, trade in Southeast Asia, there was this huge blow up saying that trade was leaving China and going into other parts of the world. And like the Bank of America report where they said, if the total trade is going to pick up and move from China, it will cost the industry $1 trillion. In fact, we have not seen that trade moving to this part of the world. We did understand it went to some other countries, but then they came under embargoes and they are coming back. So what is your view and how can we as Sri Lanka leverage on this, the positioning and make Sri Lanka a YA hub? Because if you look at sorry to mention this geographical location, we can serve India faster than India can serve itself. If you look at the transit, the routes that we can take out of Sri Lanka. What is your view, Jack, on that? Because this is something that we have been pushing, and we realize we are not the only bikini-clad girl on a beach. There are other lucrative offers coming from different countries, and they are a step ahead of us. Please, in your insight, could you brief us on what you think about?
Well, I think there obviously is an opportunity, and we do see some companies trying to move from China as well. I mean, the debates going on between China and the United States right now are obviously creating opportunities for other companies or other countries to do things, manufacturing. I think, first of all, do you have the infrastructure in place in order to host the sort of work that you want to do? What is it that they're doing in China that people in Sri Lanka could believe they could do better? And then if they can do it better, or when they do it better, how does that product move from Sri Lanka? When you look at the logistics guides and the ease of doing business guides, I mean, when you look at, we mentioned Hong Kong and Singapore, they're in the top 12 in the world in both those indices. And right now, Sri Lanka, I think in logistics is rated behind India. So obviously, if you're coming to FedEx and say, hey, we want to do business with you, or we want you to set up business here, and we think we got a natural outlier to you to get to India or Africa or whatever it might be. And I look at the ease of doing business and I look at the logistics platforms or logistics indexes, I'm going, well, it's not really what I'm looking for. I'm looking for an opportunity to improve. And it's not like, okay, India's 65 and I'm 62, so why won't you come here? I mean, realistically, you need to be in the top 10. Otherwise, if it's just a very incremental improvement, it's not really going to motivate a company to make a large investment and then still have all those inefficiencies that go in with the harder thing to do or harder way to do business. So, I'd really encourage, if I was really interested in being Singapore or Hong Kong, if I'm trying to get business from a competitor, the first thing I do is I go talk to the customers of that competitor and saying, what do they do really well? Why are they better than me? And then once I understand what they do really well and why they're better, and then I ask them, what can I do to be better than them? Where do they have their issues? So, I mean, Sri Lanka, one of the easiest things to do is start studying Hong Kong, Singapore, Denmark, some of these other countries that are so easy to do business, and do just a benchmarking comparison. And then when that company that decided to set up in Singapore or Hong Kong or Denmark or whatever, ask them, why did you choose this company and what can I do to be considered by you to set up? What would make it more efficient for you to be in Sri Lanka than in Denmark, or Sri Lanka versus Hong Kong? So it's really, we all see the same numbers. We all know what they are. You can look up the logistics index. You can look up the ease of doing business. You can see all the areas. You can see where you score. But I can tell you that doing the same thing over and over again and expecting magically people to show up, it's not going to happen. They're not going to show up. They're going to have a way to convince their stockholders that there's a financial return for us that's going to be better here than if I go someplace else. Now, I do think you have some natural benefits too. Obviously, you got freshwater ports for ocean shipping. I do think that the China to Africa lane or Asia to Africa lane is going to continue to be important. And from an ocean shipping, you have a natural line there. From an air shipping, you've got some benefits as well. I won't say, unfortunately, one of the things that you may have to overcome is a view of what's going on in places like Dubai, where I am, where Emirates and FedEx already have hubs, and say, okay, what's it going to take to get somebody to relocate or to do more here? So I think, between the trade between Asia and Africa, or Asia and the Middle East, you're situated in a place where geography is an advantage. But then so I think you got the hardware, right? I think the software needs development. We need to figure out how to become more beneficial to the companies that we want to do here. And I can tell you, if there's a benefit, business flows like water. It's going to find the natural course to the destination. And if that natural course is because of the way I can do logistics out of Sri Lanka, or the way that I can do e-business out of e-commerce out of Sri Lanka, it's going to find you. That doesn't mean you don't promote, you do, but they're going to say there's real value here.
Jack, I read you loud and clear. And just for the record, we as a country challenged this logistics index that was published by the authors and the finishers of this total, because we did not agree. As you know, Sri Lanka today can move a shipping container within 18 hours to the port of Colombo for export. The customs have digitalized, the export facilitation has opened up, minimum interference by border protection agencies. Then we brought in the business to consumer export facilitation, up to $3,000 US. Sri Lankan company can send their merchandise using a speed courier company to any part of the world without documentation. So we are on the road to that. Unfortunately, the inbound, which will need to be generated to get the outbound out, the capacities are not still here because of the de minimis regimes that operate in this part of the world. So unlike in the US, it's $800 per household per package. Sri Lanka is only $25. So and given today's exchange rate, 25, it blows it out of equation, and the numbers don't tally. But we believe that with the help of our industry experts and the authorities, that we are trying to bring this to a much better level where we could compete with our regional countries to be at least on par with them, and to see what we could do better. So that's something that we will continue to challenge. One disadvantage that we have is the inconsistent policies that happen in this part of the world. And if you would like to speak something about it, because we know as people who are pushing the authorities, the policies keep on changing every other day or every month or every quarter, and we are back to square one, reinventing the wheel again. So your thoughts on that, Jack?
Yeah, it's a fair comment. Let me just say, and I understand what you're saying about the logistics index, and this is not to say that what you did, but I looked up a couple different indexes too, and ease of doing business, which is a World Bank index, which still Sri Lanka had some opportunities. And so, you could have the greatest hardware in the world, but if information doesn't flow through it, it's going to be hard for business to make it effective. So, but to your specific point, let me just give you an example of what we do. We create a clearance system. We call it ACCS, right? So that doesn't matter for anything. But that clearance system is the basic infrastructure that we deploy in many countries around the world. But what's important for that to be effective for two reasons. One, because of the way we program the clearance system, and two, because of how we train our people to use it. If we're constantly changing, not only are my people ineffective, but I can't communicate effectively with my customers what's needed. So let's say that you want a big contract, you get set up a big distribution center at a free port in Sri Lanka, and we were going to start, the company was going to start moving stuff in for it so that they could distribute it throughout India or throughout Sri Lanka or throughout the region. And all of a sudden the rules for export continued to change, and or the rules for import continued to change. Everything stops. Everything stops until the business clearly understands, because more than likely, if you set up an air hub, what you're going to be moving is higher value goods. Let's just say it was cell phones. Let's say you were moving cell phones for all of India. You get $100 million worth of cell phones that can't be distributed because of a customs holdup, because of paperwork delay or anything else, and all of a sudden nothing is moving. Put that in perspective. I tell this story often, and I apologize if I've told this story before. I'm an old guy now. When I was in college, I determined the value of something by how long it lasted, how long it worked. I always remember when I first started in the aviation industry, we used to have these big block Motorola two-way radios. I swear to God, you could drive a nail with them. You could use them as a hammer and they'd still work. They were very valuable. They lasted forever. Go fast forward to today. I have kids now that are 30 years old. Let's see how old I am. But when they buy a phone, they like value, but they don't really care about how long it lasts, because they know within 2 years, they'll probably buy a new one. The phone could still work perfectly, could do everything it's supposed to, but because of the new features that were added on it, they want the new phone. Now let's go back to the holdup for customs. You've got a manufacturer that put a bunch of phones in a warehouse in Sri Lanka and wants to move them. Customs is holding it up for some period of time. Let's say it's 2 weeks. Think of the sales cycle on a phone that lasts 2 years, about how 2 weeks impact them, especially if a competitor got the cell phone into India 2 weeks before you. So if you had two competing brands of cell phones, let's say Apple and Samsung, the Apple phones got stuck in Sri Lanka, the Samsung phones went in 2 weeks earlier, all the people are looking for the new functions, they all bought Samsung cell phones, and Apple didn't get their phone cell. So I bring that up because sales cycle value used to be determined on how long something lasted. It could sit in inventory for a year. They'd still be the same walkie or two-way radio. Now something that sits in a warehouse for 2 weeks because of a delay, it's got less value to the market that it's going to. And it's the reality of so many things. We could say fruits and vegetables. That would be an easy one, right? Everybody understands they're perishable. But technology and things that fly by air are highly perishable, even if it's not a food. So just think about, hey, I've got to make sure that I have a reliable network, not only physical network to move goods, but a virtual network that moves the paperwork and the clearance documentations and everything else so that nothing gets delayed. Now, I'm not talking about people trying to do things wrong or ship counterfeit materials or anything else. Networks have to catch those too. So that's not what I'm talking about. But I do not believe that you have to sacrifice speed in order to ensure that you have real value or real goods, non-counterfeit goods that are being moved through your networks.
Example, and I'm so glad that my wife is not here to hear what you said about the cell phone. She keeps bugging me to get new phone.
I'll send her a note. So
oh, thank you. Thank you. Quite heartwarming. Jack, I'm curious to know where you have been into countries and hub activities, etc. What has FedEx done in supporting ease of doing business in those respective geographical locations by new innovation? What type of assistance would you provide if you are invited to do that in this type of countries like Sri Lanka and Southeast Asia?
So we do a number of different things. First of all, we get very active with chambers such as the AmCham here in Sri Lanka and some, so that we're talking to the business community and understanding what they need. That's one very important thing. One, we hear what they say. Two, we be able to share our message as well. You know, a lot of times with businesses, they're worried about their intellectual property rights. How are you ensuring that my goods are moving and counterfeit goods are being stopped? And so we work very closely with customs agencies around the world. We've set up a program right now that we call a shipment of interest program. And what that is we're looking with the support of customs, we're trying to identify goods that are counterfeit or are not allowed in a country. Maybe they're on a prohibited list for a commodity. And we try to stop them before they ever get into the country. And we turn them over to the customs agencies. There's been occasions now we're stopping the good before it leaves the origin. So this is something that it's in its infancy. Now, why does stopping a shipment allow help facilitate trade? I'll tell you why. Primarily because the better that customs trust FedEx, the more our customers' product will flow through efficiently. Because they say, FedEx is doing a good job. I've seen their systems, I've seen their processes, and they're moving things through. We also lobby governments around the world. We work very closely with governments from China, the United States, to Canada, to Africa, Europe, all over. And we lobby them. I'll tell you, in the US, when the de minimis value moved to $800, it was still $200 in the cargo business. It was still $200. FedEx, by the associations that they're in, as well as individually, went to the US government and said, why can somebody traveling in on an airplane carry $800, but when they ship it, they can only carry $200? So we lobbied governments in order to say, let's sync up the regulations so it's easy for everybody to understand what they can do. So we're doing those sorts of things as well. And we don't do that just in the United States. We do that around the world to make sure that we're consistent in the application of how we do things. Our networks, when you look at the digital networks we have, one of the things that we've done recently is we created electronic trade documents. We're allowed, where regulations allow, we don't have any paperwork to put on a package anymore. All it does is, as the address, everything else is a digital movement that not only flows through to the destination customer, but also flows through to destination customs. Recently, well, in the United States right now, I'll say this, that's one I know, and we're doing one here too, but in the United States, about 93 to 94% of our shipments arriving in the United States have cleared before the flight touches down in the US. That is a huge advantage to speed of movement goods through the network. Obviously, the US Customs understands what they do. They agree with our processes. As that package gets in, it goes right into our domestic sort and goes out for delivery the next day. No inspection. All the inspection was done virtually through the digital networks. That's a huge advantage for our customers in how we do business. We did one right now. We're doing one in South Africa. We're trying to improve the operation there. Customs is allowing us to do more pre-clearance inspections, and we're up to 70%, but we want to move that much higher as well. We've got a lot of opportunity there. And so we're looking at other markets around the world of how we can improve the pre-clearance rate. So those are things that are very important to the way we conduct our business and where we're trying to add value to our customers.
Just out of curiosity, if we could convince our customs to start listening and working with you all, would you all take that offer to come and look at inroads into this manifesting electronic documentation, which you already do, but we have tremendous and very difficult issues, especially at night in these parts of the world, where we need our urgent cargo cannot be cleared in the night because of the airplane has to be cleared. But like you said, from wheels up from a local destination to wheels down in the US, you have already cleared customs. And I believe there's a lot of encrypted digitalization that has gone through. And do you work with other countries' customs authorities to,
Yep.
enlighten them and educate them?
Absolutely. We set up a system in Vietnam a number of years ago, helping the customs there. And in the country escapes me, Sean, and I apologize. I don't want to misquote, but there was another country where we did detailed work with them on setting up their clearance operations so that they could be more effective. And believe me, I'd love to keep it just for FedEx packages, but we do it for the market. But yes, absolutely. We have experts in customs clearance. We also have a view of what's done in other countries that might be effective in Sri Lanka as well. We're obviously not a regulatory agency. We can't enforce it, but we can share it. And so, yeah, I've got folks on my team. I know Sanjeeva's probably listening. Sanjeeva's worked with my clearance team a number of times on trying to do different things. And so, yeah, absolutely. That's something that we would do and support the Sri Lankan government and or the shippers there to make it more efficient.
Thank you, Jack. It's always been my heartbeat to see a purple tail landing in Sri Lanka, but unfortunately, you have kept me waiting for so long. There's a huge opportunity out of the Far East into Colombo, where we bring a lot of raw material for urgent production orders, which we are bringing out in freighters. And will FedEx be interested in something like that on the long run, so we can have economics of scale and see how we can do that?
Definitely in the long run. And I don't want to, I want to be very clear right now, airplanes, because of the growth, general growth since COVID of volume, airplanes are in short supply. I'll just say it that way. Having said that, love to have the conversation with anybody that's looking for charter or for weekly flights or for whatever. Those conversations are welcome, and we would be happy to have them. We'll give you a straight answer so you can make plans for what you need to do. I hope it can be FedEx, but obviously, that's a decision that the business has to make on what works best for not only for FedEx, but also for the end customer and how they want to handle it. But those things are very, very, our salespeople love to have those conversations.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you so much. And I hope at least before my life ends, I could see a purple tail landing in Colombo, which I've always told
you're a young man. You got to give me a near-term goal. You got another 50, 60 years left on you.
I hope so. My wife wants me to go out right now. So Jack, thank you. I think you have been very open, very candid. And I would now like to open this floor for anybody who would like to ask some questions from you, or anybody who has any clarifications to be made. Or can I? Either we have confused them or convinced them, Jack.
Probably confused.
So far, no questions popping up, but maybe let's give it a couple of minutes.
Okay.
To our viewers, if you'd like to share any questions or thoughts, feel free to type it up in the Q&A box or in the comment section in either Facebook or YouTube, and we'll be happy to share it. We'll give you a couple of seconds, and if nothing pops up, then we will assume that they have definitely been convinced and back over. There we go. We have one question coming in. What advice do you give to Sri Lanka where we need to start in terms of lowest hanging fruit?
Well, I guess and I don't know the details of all the things that you've been through, but to me, the first place to start is a good benchmarking with who's been very effective in what you want to do. I mentioned, let me see if I can share one thing as a part of the way to answer this question. Can you guys see my trade policy and customs regime? Sean and I touched on this.
Yeah.
This is just one metric that might be of interest to share. So the effect on tariffs on trade. Look at the trade of Singapore and Hong Kong because of their low tariff rates. and look at Sri Lanka. So, I mean, people want to do business in Sri Lanka. They're still doing it with high tariff rates. But the opportunity to grow, I mean, you know, when you start looking around your region, you have an opportunity to be effective, and maybe there's steps to be made there. So first step for me is a benchmarking. Who's doing the things that Sri Lanka wants to do? Who looks similar to me and what I want to do, and who's effective? Let me benchmark with them. And then it's about what countries are in the best, or what trade lanes are most impactful to where I am in the world. You know, who is going to be in the, who's going to be the ones that would be natural to flow either over, through, or by Sri Lanka. I mentioned what I thought was going to be interesting, and that is Africa to China. But you know, a look by an economist or a marketer that does real detailed research probably give you better answers. Maybe Bangladesh, maybe Singapore, maybe could be a number of them. So you know better than I do, but those are the first two steps I would take. I have to understand what I want to be and who's doing it well, and find out what they're doing so I can put those things in place. And then I have to apply that to a market, a trade lane, and which ones make sense. And with those two things, I think things start falling in place.
Thank you, Jack. That question, do you find similar red tape? Do you find similar red tape like in India as well?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You find it in India, you find it in Pakistan. We put actually Natalie Fahmy, who does puts a lot of the work into these speeches to make me sound at least halfway decent. But we put 4 of the countries that were very similar within the region of Sri Lanka. Those were India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, were the other 3 countries that had a very similar thing. So absolutely. And that's what's unique about your opportunity, right? The region has the same philosophy towards tariffs. So if all of a sudden somebody popped out that was more like Hong Kong or Singapore, just as an example, would business flow to those locations? I believe it would. I mean, but that's something that all of you have to answer about Sri Lanka.
Yep. And it's surprising. It's very encouraging to see the growth in Pakistan since of late. Foreign direct investment is flowing. There is good governance happening. So it also will help. I see US companies also investing there, and it's a very rich country, very rich economy, and we have similarities between Pakistan and Sri Lanka. And I think, like you said, if we work together from this region as one powerhouse, I think the world is our oyster.
Yeah. Well, one of the other things that came up is how does, you know, when the red tape question came up, is how do you overcome those? Obviously, if there's a lot of market, if there's a big export market or import market, you know, it's worth the time to invest in coming out. But if you don't have a lot of goods and services flowing into or out of a country, then the incentive for FedEx to go in there and do anything is I'm going to spend a lot of money trying to overcome the regulatory environment and then not have a lot of goods and services to move in and out. So it's really just basically a business decision. China has a very tough regulatory environment. And a lot of people might point to China and said, well, why would I do anything if China's doing it? Well, China's got about 40 or 50% of the world's manufacturing. So yeah, I'm going to spend a little more time because I have a return. I have a financial benefit. And I don't know China's manufacturing. I know it's significant. I just made up the number. So I don't want to be quoted on that number, but high degree of manufacturing. India is the same thing. India has a high manufacturing capability. So I'll spend a little more time on India because I can get a return on my investment.
Thank you, Jack. Any more questions that has popped up?
Yes, we do actually have quite a few. So let me do this. Let me club a few together and tell you, okay, one of them that we have is How do you forecast logistics and shipping overall? And in that question, we also have what are the emerging hubs to look out for in the next 5 to 10 years? And what would you see as the largest challenges there? So opportunities and challenges in the next 5 to 10 years.
So how we do our forecasting is obviously one of the things. FedEx as a company now, I'm looking at Natalie to help me out, 18 million shipments a day? 15.5 million and up to, I think, 20 on peak seasons. Okay. So we're doing somewhere about 15.5 to 16 million shipments a day. So the law of large numbers tells you that you can look at that forecast and then we tie it to manufacturing index or GDP, and then we can forecast a growth rate based on the large numbers that we have. And those impact different trade lanes differently around the world, depending on how much business they're currently doing, what's the forecast for economic growth in that country, all of those things. And that's how we do our forecast. So that's been pretty effective. We have a pretty good indication. Obviously, COVID threw some changes into it because a lot of business was traveling in the belly of a passenger flight. When all those passenger flights got pulled down, that volume had to go somewhere. So we grew faster than the forecast in those situations. But when that is a pretty reliable focus area, our capability that we have. So we have pretty clear view of what's going to happen in the market and obviously adjust accordingly. Well, when you get to emerging hubs, I think the hubs in the developed in the first world countries are pretty well known. There could be some movement on those. I don't know that it'll be, I don't know that it'll be huge. I mean, Sao Paulo is big in South America. Chile's got some good volume, and I don't see South America as much. But when you start looking at Africa, I think the forecast by 2050 is that Nigeria will have 800 million people and will be the third most populous country in the world. So one of the reasons I talk about Africa is because it has the youngest population, or will have the youngest population, and has the fastest growing population. So, if you're trying to set up business, let me see. I've got young workers and I've got a lot of consumers. Yeah, there might be an opportunity here for me to do business. So that's one of the things that we're looking at. And so where do those hubs come out? And I mean, I think there's going to be pretty much Western Africa is probably going to be around Nigeria just because of the population and manufacturing center. Eastern Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, I think you always are going to look at, Kenya or Ethiopia are going to be competing for it, but Rwanda's got some strong capabilities as well. Got a good airline down there. And so far in South Africa, it's still Southern Africa, it's still South Africa. Johannesburg likely will be the stronger contender there in Africa. As you look in Asia, depending on what happens with China, and there's some good questions about will more business move out of China, might not. Vietnam has tried to step up for a lot more sourcing. But I think once you look at the size of China compared to a lot of the other Asian countries, then you've got to understand how much, it's going to have, it can't go to one place, right? And one place can't pick up all of what China's doing. So, and China's obviously going to be competitive. They'll compete to keep business as well. So, North America, Western Europe, I think those are pretty well. There could be some changes, but I don't think they'll be dramatic if there are.
Is that all, ma'am?
Thanks, Jack. No. So there's a few more, but I'm going to ask you just one more because we're kind of running out of time. How do you carve out a USP when compared with Amazon? They're turning out to be a leading logistics company in the making, and that is an interesting question for you. So that's going to be my last question.
How do you carve out a USP? I'm sorry, not USPS, but need a little help with the USP. I don't want to answer the wrong question here.
I believe the question is regarding what would be your competitive advantage when compared with Amazon or unique selling point.
Unique selling point. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Natalie was on top of it. I was a little slow. Too many acronyms. Yeah, I think one of the things that when you look at Amazon's got, obviously you don't want to ignore them. They're a large company. They've been very successful in what they do. And so, we're going to look, I think for us, we're going to focus on what we do well. And that is, we are not selling products or competing against other people that are selling products. And so we're focused on pickup and delivery, on the customs and clearance capabilities. We're focused on how do you flow it from not just last mile, not just first mile, but middle mile as well. International. So, we've got a lot of international services. So we're really focused on pickup and delivery, end-to-end service of a particular shipment between 2 points. Amazon's got other things that they do as well. They do manufacturing, they do fulfillment, they do a lot of other things, and they're good at those things. So I don't want to suggest that I know details about Amazon. So they've, like I said before, we've got 680 airplanes. They don't have quite that many. We have a lot of 777s creating huge intercontinental opportunities. They do operate 767s, and 767s have some transoceanic capabilities, but I like our position for what we do. I'll just say it that way.
Thank you, Jack. It's always been a pleasure talking to you and seeing you once again. And if there's nothing, I just want to say thank you once again from the bottom of my heart for this insight that you have offered our community and our country. And we look forward to seeing you once again and over to the organizer. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate it very much. Pleasure to be with all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean, for your very effective and professional moderation. And of course, Jack, for taking the time to be with us and to share with us your insights and your knowledge on what is definitely a very interesting and also a very, very important topic. On behalf of the AmCham Secretariat, the board, and of course, all of our members, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for everything that you do in the logistics industry. And of course, thank you for being the heroes, even without the capes. Stay safe, everybody. Have a great evening. Good night and God bless.
Thank you. Bye-bye.